The steel gates of her mansion hadn't opened in weeks. Curtains drawn, phones ignored. The CEO everyone once feared had locked herself away, refusing doctors, refusing the world. But that night, when the storm raged hardest, the knock came, sharp, desperate. A poor father stood there, soaked through, his little girl shivering in his arms. He whispered, "Please, oh, she's sick." And in that instant, her world of silence cracked open. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Caroline Hayes, once the unstoppable CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, had become a ghost inside her own fortress. The cancer diagnosis was something she refused to acknowledge, pushing away doctors and investors alike. But that night, when thunder rattled the glass and lightning cut across the sky, she answered the door herself. On her porch stood Daniel Carter, mid-30s, a man whose clothes carried the wear of construction sites and late shifts. In his arms, his daughter Lily, barely 7, wheezed against his chest, her skin pale and damp with fever. Caroline's first instinct was to close the door. She didn't owe anyone kindness, not anymore. But Lily's small hand gripped her father's shirt, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Daddy, I'm cold." Caroline's chest tightened. She hadn't heard a child's voice inside her house in years. "What? Why come here?" she demanded, her tone sharp but cracked. Daniel's eyes burned with a mix of desperation and humility. "Because every clinic in town turned me away. No insurance, no money. They said I should try the big houses on the hill. You're the last one with lights on." Her jaw clenched. She wanted to slam the door, to stay cocooned in her bitterness. But Lily's cough tore through the storm, raw and fragile. Something in Caroline shattered. She stepped aside. "Get in." The warmth of the mansion swallowed them whole. Marble floors, chandeliers. Yet it was the fire Caroline hastily lit that mattered. She draped her own cashmere blanket around Lily's shoulders. The girl smiled faintly, whispering, "Thank you, ma'am." Daniel's voice broke. "You didn't have to," Caroline snapped. "Don't mistake this for charity." "I don't do charity." But her trembling hands, as she checked Lily's forehead, betrayed her. As the night deepened, walls of silence crumbled. Caroline, for the first time in months, wasn't thinking about her illness. She was listening to the rasp of a child's breath, to a father's quiet prayers. And somewhere between the firelight and the storm, the woman who had buried herself alive felt something return, a pulse of life, fragile yet undeniable. The storm outside raged on, beating against the tall windows of Caroline Hayes's mansion, but inside, silence hung heavy between the three of them. The crackle of the fireplace filled the space, shadows dancing across the grand room. Daniel Carter sat at the edge of an armchair, his daughter Lily curled in his lap. Wrapped tightly in the cashmere blanket Caroline had given her, Caroline stood near the fire, arms crossed, her jaw tight as if she was trying to convince herself she'd made a mistake letting them in. She had spent months shutting the world out, refusing treatment, refusing pity, refusing the constant corporate vultures circling her company like sharks. But somehow a desperate father and his sick little girl had forced their way inside her fortress, and she didn't know how to handle it. Lily coughed again, her small body trembling, and Caroline flinched at the sound. It reminded her of nights long ago when her younger brother had battled pneumonia. She had sat by his bed all night, holding his hand, praying he'd survive. He didn't. That loss had driven her to build empires, to never be powerless again. And yet here she was, powerless again. Except this time, the life in front of her wasn't her brother's. It was this little girl's. "Does she have any medication?" Caroline asked abruptly, her voice sharper than she intended. Daniel shook his head. "No, the clinic. They wouldn't even look at her. Said I needed insurance first. I've been trying to manage with over-the-counter stuff, but..." He trailed off, his voice breaking as he kissed his daughter's damp hair. "It's not enough anymore." Caroline bit the inside of her cheek. She hated weakness, especially in herself. But seeing Daniel's helplessness twisted something in her chest. She turned on her heel and left the room. Daniel's heart pounded as he watched her disappear down the long hallway. Was she throwing them out? Had he risked everything coming here? He was about to rise, clutching Lily tighter, when Caroline returned, carrying a leather medical kit. She dropped it on the coffee table, her eyes never leaving Lily. "My company has doctors on call. I pushed them all away, but I kept this." She crouched, her once perfectly manicured hands trembling as she pulled out a thermometer and a vial of antibiotics. Daniel's throat tightened. You're going to help her?" Caroline didn't answer directly. She simply muttered, "Hold her steady." Lily whimpered when the needle touched her skin, but Caroline's voice softened, unexpectedly gentle. "Shh, it'll be over before you know it." Her words carried an authority, but also a warmth Daniel hadn't expected from the reclusive CEO. When it was done, Lily's breathing began to even out, her fevered cheeks cooling under the blanket. Relief washed over Daniel, and for the first time in months his shoulders sagged. "Thank you," he whispered, emotion thick in his voice. "You didn't have to—" Caroline cut him off, but her voice cracked. "I told you, don't mistake this for charity." She rose quickly as though afraid of what her own kindness might reveal, but Daniel saw it. The flicker of humanity she was fighting so hard to bury. For a while, the only sound was the fire. Daniel rubbed his daughter's back as she drifted into sleep, and Caroline stood by the window, staring out into the black night. Finally, he broke the silence. "Why do you live like this?" His voice was careful, respectful, but laced with curiosity. Caroline stiffened. "Like what?" "In a mansion this big, with all the lights off, curtains drawn, no one around. You could have the world at your feet, but you've locked yourself in here." "Why?" She turned sharply, her eyes flashing. "You think you have the right to ask me that?" Daniel didn't flinch. "No, but sometimes keeping everything bottled up kills us faster than the sickness itself." The words hit her like a blow. Her gaze faltered, her lips parting as if she wanted to snap back but couldn't. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Everyone around her either feared her power or craved her money. But this man, this broke construction worker with a sick child, had nothing to gain from her. His words were raw, unpolished, but true. She sank into a chair opposite him, her shoulders sagging for the first time in years. "You don't know what it's like," she whispered, her voice trembling. "To build everything, to claw your way up from nothing, and then watch your own body betray you. To know the clock is ticking, and no amount of money can stop it." Daniel's eyes softened. "You're right. I don't know your world, but I know what it's like to feel powerless. I've been powerless most of my life. But tonight you weren't. You saved her." He looked down at Lily, now sleeping soundly. "That counts for something." Caroline's eyes burned. She hadn't cried in years, had taught herself that tears were weakness. But sitting across from a man who owned nothing and still found strength to keep going for his daughter, it broke through her armor. "You came here with nothing," she said slowly. "And yet you carry more courage than most of the men in my boardroom." Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "I don't know about that. I just do what I have to." The grandfather clock struck midnight. The storm outside began to quiet, the thunder rolling into the distance. For the first time in months, Caroline felt something she thought she'd lost forever: connection. As she watched Daniel stroke his daughter's hair with calloused, tender hands, she realized something. She had been hiding from death so long that she'd forgotten how to live, and though she didn't know it yet, that night would mark the beginning of her transformation, from a woman drowning in silence to someone who might finally learn to let others in. But the world outside hadn't forgotten her, and by morning, the choices she'd made to let this father and daughter in would bring consequences neither of them expected. The morning light broke through cracks in the heavy curtains, a pale reminder that life outside her mansion hadn't stopped just because Caroline Hayes had tried to bury herself in it. For months she had kept the world at bay, reporters begging for updates on her health, board members demanding she return, investors whispering that her empire was crumbling without her. But now, with Daniel and Lily asleep in her living room, something felt different. She stood in the doorway watching them. Daniel's head rested against the back of the armchair, exhaustion etched deep into his face. one arm wrapped protectively around his daughter, who slept soundly under Caroline's blanket. The sight stirred something painful inside her chest. For years, she had dismissed family as a distraction, a weakness she couldn't afford. All she'd had was her empire, her endless fight to prove herself. But what good was all the money, all the power, when she was too afraid to let anyone close enough to share it with? Her phone buzzed from the side table. The sound was sharp, jarring, dragging her back into the reality she'd been running from. She picked it up reluctantly. It was a message from her assistant. "The board is meeting today. They're moving to vote you out permanently. If you don't show up, it's over." Her chest tightened. She had built that company from the ground up, poured her youth, her health, her sanity into it. And now they were ready to strip it away because she had vanished into silence. Behind her, Daniel stirred. "Everything okay?" His voice was groggy, but his eyes sharpened when he saw the phone in her hand and the strain on her face. "No," Caroline said flatly. "It's not." He shifted carefully, not wanting to wake Lily. "You can talk to me, you know." Caroline almost laughed. The absurdity of it. A billionaire CEO confiding in a man who worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. But when she looked at him, at the quiet strength in his gaze, she didn't feel mocked. She felt seen. "They're voting me out," she admitted, her voice cracking. "The company I built, the empire that defined me. And I can't stop them." "Not like this," Daniel leaned forward. "Then don't fight for the company. Fight for yourself," her eyes flashed. "Easy for you to say. That company is my life. Without it, I have nothing." Daniel's voice was steady, but there was fire behind it. "No, without it, you'd finally have a chance to live. You've been hiding behind glass walls and power suits so long, you forgot what living even is. My daughter," he glanced at Lily, sleeping peacefully. "She doesn't care about money or titles. She just needs someone to show up, to care, to fight for her." His words hit harder than she wanted to admit. Caroline turned away, gripping the curtain until her knuckles whitened. "You don't understand," she whispered. "When you've lost people, when you've buried your own family, you learn not to need anyone. You learn to stand alone. It's safer that way." Daniel stood, moving closer. He wasn't towering or intimidating, but there was weight in his presence. And where has standing alone gotten you? Locked away in a mansion, dying in silence while the world waits to pick your bones clean. Caroline froze, her throat burning. No one dared speak to her like that. Not her board, not her investors, not even her so-called friends. But Daniel wasn't saying it to tear her down. He was saying it to pull her out. "You saved my daughter last night," he continued softly. "You could have slammed that door in our faces, but you didn't. That wasn't weakness, Caroline. That was strength. The kind that actually matters." Her eyes stung. For the first time in years, she let a single tear fall, sliding down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, but Daniel saw. He didn't point it out. He didn't mock her. He simply let the silence breathe between them. Lily stirred awake, blinking against the morning light. "Daddy?" she murmured, her voice weak but steadier than last night. Daniel knelt beside her instantly. "I'm here, sweetheart." Caroline knelt too, almost without thinking. "How do you feel?" Lily looked at her, her small blue eyes curious. "Better. Did you help me?" Caroline hesitated, then nodded. "A little," the girl smiled, small but sincere. "Thank you." Something in Caroline's chest cracked open. That simple word, "thank you," meant more than any award, any contract, any headline. The moment was interrupted by a sharp buzz at the front gates. The security system flashed across a monitor. 3 black SUVs lined up, men in suits stepping out. Caroline's bored. They hadn't waited for her. They had come to take what was left. Her pulse spiked. Panic clawed at her throat. "They're here." Daniel stood, placing himself instinctively between her and the sight of the monitors. "Then face them," she shook her head. "I can't. They'll see me like this, weak, sick, alone." "No," Daniel said firmly. "They'll see you standing. They'll see you fighting. You still have a choice, Caroline. You can let them bury you, or you can remind them exactly who you are." Caroline's breathing quickened. For months she had refused treatment, refused to face the world. But now she felt something stir inside her again. Not just fear, not just anger, but the raw, pulsing will to take back what she had lost. She looked at Lily, still curled under her blanket, her tiny smile full of trust. She looked at Daniel, worn down by life yet unbroken, his eyes steady and unyielding, and for the first time in years, she felt something she thought had died inside her. Courage. She straightened her shoulders, wiped her face, and walked toward the door. Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Let them in." Daniel gave a single nod, a quiet anchor in the storm. As the doors opened and the men in suits filed inside, their smug expressions ready to strip her empire away, Caroline Hayes stood tall, sick, fragile, human but unbroken, and in the corner of the grand room, a poor father and his daughter watched silently, knowing they had witnessed something the world had forgotten, the moment a woman who had everything rediscovered the one thing she had lost: herself.